shared. To my knowledge, this is probably the only time that the President of the Jersey Farmers Union has spoken at the farming conference. In recent years, delegates to the conference, especially farmers, have been keen to understand the exciting developments that are taking place in areas such as cattle breeding, carbon reduction, cleaner water, gene editing and robotics. And whilst that's all new and exciting and in the future, and I'm sure we'll hear more today about that, what about what's going on today in our industry? Are the industry members sitting here today giving their conference their undivided attention, or do they have a mind on how they will survive next year? The 17th century is regarded as the moment that Jersey moved from a primarily land-based self-sufficiency to a cash-based mixed economy, cider production, knitting, manufacture, commerce. And why 2022? Surprisingly, there are probably people in this room who are even older than me, who have seen threats posed to our industry before, but they've never seen rising costs on the scale we see today. On this graph, we're showing what we anticipate are the rising costs between January 2021 and January 2022. Wages up 11%, fertiliser 100, fuel 40, plastic 20, chemicals 10, freight 20, repairs renewals 15. And that affects, as you can see, all sectors. Potatoes are particularly affected by fertiliser, plastic, chemicals and freight. And wages are the biggest cost in vegetable and indoor production. If I can park the labour rise to one side for a minute and deal with the rest of those, the politicians in the room can relax because none of those others are their fault. The fertiliser rise is the one that most of you probably know something about. Not because the high gas price closed the CF fertiliser plant in the UK, which would have probably crippled the entire British growing industry, but because the byproduct of fertiliser production is CO2. And suddenly, the British government, the British public realised that CO2 is an essential part in a myriad of processes, from food to fizzy drinks, even to storing vaccines. Is it just me, or is it slightly ironic that as the great and the good gather in Glasgow to reduce CO2 emissions, we are crippled as a nation when we don't produce them? Fuel prices have gone up dramatically in the last 12 months. The price of oil a year ago was $53 a barrel. Today it's closer to 84. And whilst you may think January 2020 was COVID influenced, the price a year earlier was only $57 a barrel. So this is another big rise. Plastics are oil-based, and so the rise is not surprising there. And chemicals, to be honest with you, is only an educated guess. Whilst Jersey uses little in the way of chemicals during the autumn, in the UK cereals are being drilled, and the worry there is a shortage of chemicals. It seems that in the supply chain shortage, the most profitable chemicals only get produced. Freight prices too are volatile. Locally we seem to be okay, but the shortage of HGV drivers in the UK and the riot has been well publicised. Whilst the volume of Jersey Royals will give it some clout in the marketplace, as we on our own farm found this summer, no one was willing to take small loads of other crops at even a reasonable price. The cost of repairs and renewals is definitely up, at least 15%. Wood, steel and labour are all up. But once again, supply can be as much of an issue as cost. So how do we address these rising costs and survive? I believe there are three parties involved: the market, stroke consumer, the farmer, the government. If we deal with the market first, if Jersey's minimum wage was the only factor at hand, My belief is that the supermarket view would be the same as in the last 5 years. There'd be no price rise. We'd be told to grow them cheaper, reduce our costs. However, this is a UK, even EU problem, and I believe that something will have to give. Many UK growers are already struggling with staff shortages, and so 2021 for them has been a difficult year, and they too will struggle to survive that and the rises ahead. Secondly, EU growers are also experiencing the same cost increases, so they will put pressure on. I think it is likely that food prices will rise, but how much by and how much the end producer will get is still unknown. It has to also be recognised that some price contracts for Jersey Royals are not on an annual basis, and so they may be difficult to renegotiate in the short term. The consumer is another important factor, especially locally. Since the pandemic began, it's become apparent that the local public have begun a reconnection with the countryside and the value you get from it. I believe the public have begun to appreciate the importance of local food, particularly when there are bare shelves in the supermarket. I believe that it is easier for them to understand now and accept rises in food prices than it was 2 years ago. What can we do as growers? I know this may sound defeatist, but not very much. The farmers and growers of this island have been reducing costs for the last 10 years. Margins have been tight, food inflation in the way of returns to growers has been negligible, so growers have had to reduce costs to survive. At the same time, initiatives such as the Action for Cleaner Water Group and the membership of LEAF have meant that less fertiliser and chemicals have been used, to the point where a reduction now would lead to lower yields. Through LEAF 2, growers monitor fuel use, so again, only small reductions may be possible. It is possible to reduce plastic use still further by reductions in area and the use of plastic twice, but it is important we remember that we have to keep our early advantage in the market and we have to keep continuity. We can increase the replacement timing of our tractors and machinery to save money, but this has to be carefully considered against the rising cost of repairs. The only other area where savings can be made is in rents, but with 3 or 5 year leases, only small reductions can be made immediately. Finally, what can the government do? Let's start with the problem. Minimum wage has gone up, or will do, from January the 1st by 11%. Holiday entitlement is going up by 50%. The cost to employ a new person is work permit £115, social security card £80, UK visa £244. These last 3 alone cost somebody £11 a week, either the employer or the employee. At the moment, as you all know, it's an employee's market. Can't government reduce some of these costs? Why, if the same employees are returning after 3 months enforced absence, could we not have a reduced permit fee? Why, if they pay social security from day one, don't they get cover from day one? These are not medical tourists. They are here to work. At the moment, the staff and growers have to provide medical insurance for the first 6 months for those who come from outside Europe, another cost. We are trying, through the Rural Economy team and Deputy Morrell, at the moment to persuade the Minister for Social Security to help us mitigate the scale of the rise in a number of ways. Firstly, to reinstate the offset allowed at a rate commensurate with the percentage rise. Secondly, to consider reducing agriculture employers' contributions to help the industry through this difficult period. The Employment Forum, and I believe the Minister and other politicians, realise that our industry is a problem when it comes to the minimum wage. Many politicians rightly wish to see that the poorest in society get a decent wage rate. They wish to see that people don't have to rely on income support. And yet, apart from last year when there was no rise because of COVID, the minimum wage has gone up above the cost of living again and again, and yet the situation does not improve. And why is that? Well, really, with the finance industry in the island, with its high salaries, this distorts the average earning figures and then pushes up the price of rents in the island. And this is where farming doesn't fit in. The vast majority of our staff are in our accommodation. The vast majority of our staff have an opportunity to work more than 40 hours a week. So the disposable income of our staff is such that they are on a good living weekly wage already. And while we're on the subject of increased costs, do states members realise that the 11% headline rise in the minimum wage is now nearer 14 when you bolt on the extras? And by extras, I mean the 50% extra holiday pay, which we're going to have to pay for next year, and the rest breaks increase. We understand that a wrongly pushed button has cost all small businesses, not just growers, another 5 minutes of cost. And what's 5 minutes? Well, traditionally in our industry, everyone has a 15-minute paid break sometime during the morning. It might be okay in an office, but if you're doing hard physical work, you need a break. Now, 5 minutes extra doesn't seem much, but until you multiply it by 6 days, now it's half an hour. On a typical 50-hour week, it's another 1% cost to our business. Surely if a simple chap like me can work this out, someone in government can. Then this gives actually a total rise in wages next year of closer to 14%, which is unaffordable. So, who can save our industry? If all else fails, who can it be? If you're like me and were taken by surprise by COVID-19, I was even more surprised to find that this man now speaks for the British farming industry and is being listened to. Someone said recently, Jeremy Clarkson has done more for British agriculture in the last 2 years than Countryfile has in the last 30. And why is that? Well, he bought a farm, thought he could run it himself, because as he said at the time, how difficult can it be? You buy a tractor, a couple of machines, get some fertiliser, bring some seed in, get the field ready, sow the seeds, they grow, you harvest, you get a big cheque, and then you do it all again next year. And why Jeremy is important is because that's what a lot of the British public think. Or they did until they started watching his programmes. He suggests that we reject the public money for public good mantra and replace it with public money for public security. As he puts it in his best Anglo-Saxon English, if the shit hits the fan for whatever reason, we can still feed ourselves. With nearly 8 billion people on this planet, and an ability to probably only feed half of those sustainably, it is something we should all take seriously. He is suggesting we have more investment in technology sooner. I am pleased to say that with some government support, the JFU have signed an agreement with Lincoln and Cambridge universities to design a robotic system for planting potatoes. A local indoor producer is hoping to have a basic robot to pick tomatoes on trial next year. And Jeremy suggests we need to go further and have robot tractors to kill weeds by electric shock rather than chemicals. So this is why the fund for the local productivity scheme must be increased. It was pathetic that the last tranche of productivity money, when it was announced, was not for any business over 20 people, not available to businesses already receiving state support. In other words, not available to growers. We seem to be frozen out of everything. Look at COVID. Every other industry, it seems, received help. There were lawyers and accountants being supported, but not growers. We were considered essential and battled on, but the costs were enormous. At the beginning, Hannah spoke about all the good things that are going on in agriculture, and whilst we do have the difficulties ahead, I believe that we can and we have to survive. So will our industry boom? Well, perhaps not boom, but there are encouraging signs out there. Firstly, as I mentioned earlier, it is inconceivable that prices won't rise at all. Let us hope that the marketing companies or growers take this opportunity to reset prices to levels that we can all live with. Already prices of winter veg are rising, so that perhaps the message is at last getting across to multiple buyers. At the same time, our ministers here must make every effort to ensure that the ferry service is totally reliable, so that service levels from Jersey are seen as first class, which was not always the case this year. Secondly, at this period in time when climate change is the dominant issue, as an industry, we can provide some of the solutions. Your crops, your permanent grass, your hedges, your trees, all have a cash value in carbon sequestration. The UK has got its first online natural capital trading platform. We must not be left behind. One or two growers I know are already looking at options to take this forward, and I believe the Jersey Farmers Union has a role in making this happen. And thirdly, our dairy industry. I was kindly invited by the RJA and HS to a conference last week, specifically to do with the use of the Jersey cow in Africa. Starting from a small trial in Rwanda some years ago, the success it has meant has been rolled out to other African countries, such as Ethiopia and Malawi. I took note of two important messages from that conference. Firstly, the Jersey cow itself. From all the data produced, it's the most efficient when it comes to milk per kilogram of food. So when it comes to carbon footprint, it's also the best in that area. Secondly, the effect of the introduction of our Jersey cow is life-changing. The animal is literally a cash cow. Over its lifetime, it provides milk, manure, meat, leather, hoof and horn. Nothing is wasted. The increased incomes mean better health and education for the young on that continent. What a fantastic message that is. And here in Jersey, the export of milk products continues to be a success. And at home, at a time when shelves are sometimes empty, the Jersey dairy provides a guaranteed supply of milk and other dairy products all year round. Our fruit and vegetables, not forgetting the egg sector, provide a similar service, which I believe as an island we can't afford to lose. I hope this has given you, the audience, a picture of where our industry stands at the moment. One cannot pretend that it's not going to be a challenging 12 months. But I know that you, the farmers and growers in this room, with the drive and passion you have for our industry, will give it everything to make a success of 2022. And I hope that our politicians will give us the real support where necessary, starting with a reduction in employers' social security contributions to counteract the high increased cost of employment. Thank you very much.